At the base of the sacred mountain, the young dingoes, Waka and Kintala, didn't stop tackling each other. Waka's cunning often allowed her to win at this game. But Kintala didn't want to give up. Lying in wait on the banks of the estuary, Ken and his clan of crocodiles ravaged the endless supply of shore crabs. But these crustacean lovers respected the old ways and only ate after their leader. On Kangaroo Island, Pogo, Cartania's baby, had discovered the strangeness of the world that crosses the path of a creature, such as this echidna found nowhere else but on the last continent. All this Paraji projected on the Dome of Dreams, for it is in this way we enter life when our dream begins. Our story takes place on a continent separated from the world, seemingly adrift in the middle of the ocean. Its isolation has permitted improbable creatures to be born. A platypus dives and starts to search for some small crustaceans that he might torment or swallow. Today, the crayfish that loiters about hasn't got a chance of being left alone in peace. When he dives, aided by his palmed feet, a fold of skin covers the eyes of the platypus. The animal must then depend on his beak in order to find his way around. Numerous nerves irrigate this appendage made of supple leather and transform it into a sensitive organ. Thanks to these nerves, the platypus can detect invertebrates and small crustaceans in the sand in order to feed himself. The crayfish thinks he can find an isle of safety in an emerging stump of a tree. But the platypus doesn't agree. He dives again and discovers the difficulties of not being able to see clearly. This stump is not what it seems. Someone has been disturbed and is not happy about it. A good hunting ground is finally located. Having been discovered, the crayfish adopts an attack posture. The platypus runs off by means of an opposing opening. The tail of a beaver, the beak of a duck, babies that come into the world inside of eggs, which are incubated for 10 days inside the abdomen of the mother. The platypus has intrigued naturalists in the same manner that an eastern snake-necked turtle is fascinated by him. The platypus was taken for a reptile, and then it was discovered that it nurses its young. The platypus was definitely a mammal. Together with the echidna, the platypus is the only representative from the family of monotremes. It lives only in Australia, protected from the rest of the world by oceans, and from rare predators by a poisonous spur situated in the males on the back foot. Seemingly kept away from all danger on Kangaroo Island, the western gray kangaroos, Cartania and her son Pogo, spend a day that one would think is ordinary. Suddenly breaking into the routine, an unknown arrives. His name is Kudla, the isolated, the loner. It's the newcomer who has an interest in Cartania. He attempts to move Pogo out of the way in order to approach her and better sniff her. Cartania doesn't like these mannerisms and moves away. Skillfully, Kudla turns the mother around to separate her better from her child. But the suitor is still a young, inexperienced male, certain of his desire, but not by his ability to impose it. Pogo calmly sniffs and munches some dry grass. After a moment's hesitation, Cartania adopts an attitude of total indifference. Her coldness almost immediately produces a wounded effect. Pogo comes back to his mother. Kudla attempts to intercept him, to hold him for a few moments in the proximity of Cartania, but the young kangaroo proceeds on his way. Humiliated, Kudla jealously considers the intimate relationship that exists between mother and child. Pogo and Cartania moved away, but Kudla doesn't give up, staying close to them to await his next chance when circumstances will be more favorable for him. In the heart of the Great Red Desert, situated in the center of the continent, some of the waters that still flow have declined. In this region, only 2 inches of rainfalls per year, of which 88% evaporates as soon as it comes in contact with the ground. It's still not yet the hot and arid season, but the dry. Like its nickname, it announces itself through even more torrid days than usual. Paraji the dingo has exhumed a piece of meat that today will serve him in order to reinforce the hierarchy inside of the clan that he forms with his 2 children. Kintala moves himself towards this promise of a meal. His father will take advantage by teaching him some discipline. One cannot eat before the leader of the pack. The young male starts to adopt a submissive posture. He stays in the background, sitting, lying down on the ground in front of Paraji, and begging more than he needs to. Waka, his sister, keeps herself away. By virtue of his sex, Kintala's calling is to become the rival of Paraji. But the young female doesn't threaten the authority of her father, who therefore has leniency for her. In order to reward him for having learned his lesson, Paraji leaves a little bit of meat for Kintala. Under the watch and the nose of his jealous sister, Kintala savors his privileges voraciously. He receives good compensation for the harshness of his education. Waka understands that from now on, her rank in the pack will be 3rd. Today, Paraji has administered a double lesson to his children. He has taught Kintala to honor his master, and Waka that the chain of command is only completed well with a last link. Over there, where the assassin is, a golden orb weaver, we find some victims. The marsh of the north furnishes the spider with his daily tribute of gnats, hornets, or young dragonflies. The web is ideally situated above these waters where, at any moment, young, dazzled insects take their first flight. The dragonfly, a carnivore throughout all the stages of its life, sometimes finds itself caught in the traps of one of the most sticky webs that a spider can produce. The female golden orb weaver measures close to 2 inches, while the male reaches a limit of 1/3 of an inch. He can mate with his companion without her even having seen him. A nest of hornets, made by vegetation half digested and mixed with saliva, is under construction. But one of the workers has succumbed to an attack by a dragonfly that has descended on it like a falcon on her prey. The jaws of the predator sever each segment of the victim's body, beginning with the head, which will be lost from not paying attention. On a neighboring plant, a cohort of green tree ants bustles about. They take cover in the nest made of leaves close to them, which are joined with the assistance of a sort of sticky silk produced by the larvas. These ants are capable of exuding a deterrent acid on their predators, but they are welcomed with benevolence by their hosts. Their rejects enrich the earth at the root of the plants. Leichhardt's grasshopper doesn't possess any chemical weapon to defend himself in case of need. This is why he is endowed with vibrant colors, so that the predators consider him like a billboard. The insect feeds on poisonous plants, which results in his body giving off a bad taste and a bad odor. It is also soaked in toxins. The defense strategy of the giant phasmid is founded on the contrary, with discretion. The animal blends in with the countryside where he evolves. In all ways, he resembles a piece of grass, a stick lightly blossoming. Sometimes it happens that an adventurous phasmid places himself at risk on a terrain where his camouflage is less suitable. He will not escape the attention of the frilled lizard, who looks identical to a branch of a tree. The frilled lizard is gifted with excellent vision. He can see a visitor approaching from a very far distance. Normally, he moves himself towards the side of the branch that the stranger cannot see. But this maneuver is prohibited when the intruder cuts off all of his retreat routes. The presence of a giant phasmid disturbs the lizard, who continues to stay completely still, up until the moment where his patience has run out. When he feels threatened, the frilled lizard deploys a crown of skin around his neck that makes him seem more frightening. He keeps an escape route open from the giant phasmid, who is finally the winner. It's the hour when Min, the Varanus of Gould, feels the freshness of the evening numbing his body. Like all cold-blooded animals, his energy depends on an ambient environment. From the top of his tree's shortened trunk, the white-bellied sea eagle of Asia dominates the mangrove. He digests fish and serpents, ingesting all day long and sometimes rearing himself up to reject the droppings. The plain is still flooded at the base of the sandstone cliffs that run for 300 miles in Arnhem Land. 9 to 10 feet of water cover it. In a few weeks, however, one will be able to walk on dry land. This sheet of liquid that lasts half of the year is fed by numerous rivers. Their sources form, for example, the spectacular Jim Jim Falls that fall from a height of 600 feet and that are preceded by numerous streams of water. Below, an undefined border hesitates to separate the aquatic world from the terrestrial world. It's the domain of the amphibians that pass through each world without any difficulty. Among these stateless ones, a Mertens water goanna seems to hesitate between the two. In the marshes roams the largest crocodile in the world, Salty, that's to say, the saltwater crocodile. The crocodile swims, moving back his limbs along his body, which improves his degree of penetration into the water. It is the undulations of the tail that furnish him with the strength of propulsion. Contrary to his nickname, the Salty lives principally in fresh waters, but he can tolerate well the salt waters of the estuaries. In swallowing his favorite prey, the crocodile also swallows unintentionally great quantities of salt water, which normally would run a risk to his health. But the specialized glands located on his tongue extract the excess salt found in the blood, thereby maintaining a balance. E-tailed catfish, archerfish, and barramundi flourish in the estuaries. Such an abundance satisfies the crocodile as well as the Mertens water goanna. The Mertens water goanna resembles a submersible. Like the crocodile, his nostrils are situated in the extremity of his muzzle. This permits both reptiles to breathe after several minutes of apnea by simply lightly touching the surface. The presence of a varanus upsets the crocodile. The varanus, who is smaller in size, withdraws quickly to the bank, where he will warm his body with the rays of the sun. In certain tree groves where the red flying foxes live, some females have regrouped. They are several hundred. Tomorrow, they will be in the thousands. Already, the skin of their stomach stretches on a dome that swells. The babies that they wait for will weigh at birth between 10 to 25% of their own weight. A newborn human of the same proportion would weigh between 15 and 45 pounds. The gestation period will last for 5 months. For a red flying fox, it represents an investment of such energy that the animal can only give birth 1 time per year. The females group so that they can assume their gestational responsibilities together without any interference from the males. On Kangaroo Island, at the south of the continent, an Australian magpie bypasses Cartania and her son Pogo. The Australian magpie finds his ration of invertebrates by turning over each stone, each twig. The snooper intrigues Pogo, whose attention is soon diverted by the combat involving his grandmother Burka against the elusive aggressors. Yam, Burka's slow son, is being hugged by Kudla. The newcomer who is trying to seduce Cartania shows his enthusiasm. A fight starts between the 2 young males, but the meaning of this confrontation is different for both of them. Yam doesn't realize that his adversary is using him to get the attention of Cartania. For Yam, it is only a game. Kudla, on the left, doesn't want to win too quickly over Yam. His victory will be judged as being too easy. Therefore, he wants the pleasure to last. The action starts up again. Kudla pushes away his opponent, who starts to fear that the game is turning sour. Yam attempts to reply shot per shot, but he feels that the game is fixed and ends up by ceding the terrain. With kangaroos, it's not their fists that give the strongest shots, but the hindquarters. These are violently and simultaneously projected towards the chest of an adversary by means of pushing on one's tail. Yam has been defeated, and Kudla leads him around like a toy, getting him to do what he wants without any effort. Decidedly too humiliated, Yam hesitates before returning a last time towards his foe, who looks him up and down. It's finished for Yam, who will not have any choice other than retreat. The kangaroo who didn't want to grow up has made a supplementary step toward adulthood, but Kudla, by attacking someone weaker, has won only a slim victory. In the large desert where the dingo's apprenticeship takes place, Kintala has scented an unknown odor. It's so strong that the world is almost changed. Without knowing it, Kintala is going towards some strange creatures, the strangest that he's ever met. The intruders are in small numbers, a dozen, but Kintala's nostrils could have counted 1,000. One of them pours out his urine and his excrement with the aid of his tail. Another one turns towards the dingo with a disconcerting face. The dingo analyzes the odor of the monster, who analyzes him in return. Through a collective memory, a camel knows that a dingo is never a friend. But Kintala doesn't know anything about a camel. He only takes note of one thing. Such a presumptuous visitor dares to mark a territory that is not his. When the young dingo approaches in the hope of intimidating the camel, who is now foaming at the mouth, the camel makes his troop start walking. The invaders have escaped. It is he, Kintala, son of Paraji, that made them so scared. The young dingo embellishes the pleasure of the illusion and chases off the runaways by pursuing them, very far away from them. The camels are gone, leaving along their way the traces of their visit. Kintala will not forget them. Each time their odor floats in the air, his brain will bring it closer as a souvenir of this first meeting. More and more frequently, Kintala ventures alone into the desert, motivated by curiosity. And each new experience under Mount Artula completes his apprenticeship. A saltwater crocodile sprawls along a bank where the falling water levels each day leave a little terrain. The fish, more concentrated, are more exposed to the claws of the white-bellied eagle. For all of the birds who populate the marshes of the north, life is becoming sweeter. The magpie goose enlarges her area, caressing the mud with a lazy beak and finding bulbs and roots of aquatic plants without any difficulty. Some glossy ibis are gathering in small colonies to track frogs and insects in the marsh. Today on the bank, two families walk towards each other, observing themselves at the same time. On one side, the agile wallabies, and on the other, the brolgas. On their way, these hikers admired the black-necked stork, the darter, the pied heron, and the little egret not far from the masked lapwing. The wedge-tailed eagle was on the watch. The comb-crested jacana was walking on water. Both of the groups took an interest in each other, then carried on walking. The agile wallaby, lover of wet surroundings, uses his tail, which is proportionately longer than the kangaroo's, as a supplementary lower limb. This gait gives him the soft allure from where he got his name. The cranes and the wallabies approached each other. Within a moment, they would meet. The wallabies were all quite troubled and almost intimidated. The white birds seemed arrogant, the wallabies insignificant. So, at the moment when they crossed each other's paths, they pretended to ignore each other. On Kangaroo Island, Yam and Kudla have resumed their fruitless fighting. The wrestling normally is the result of a rivalry between two males who covet the same female. Here, it's Kartanya's younger brother that Kudla bullies in order to make himself admired by her. The confrontation ends when Yam, humiliated, lies down as a sign of submission. Pogo and Kartanya, impressed by the fieriness of the young male, know from now on that he will not leave them in peace. Pogo tried to behave normally and would like to appear uninteresting to the newcomer. Kudla allows him the possibility of acting this way because he is busy with something else. Kartanya doesn't seem to mind the fact that Kudla is continuing his courtship of her. Nothing will stop her physically from becoming fertilized, even if she is still feeding Pogo. A new baby comes into the world in an incompleted form, a sort of embryo, an inch or less, who climbs up the pouch unassisted. There, he attaches himself to one of 4 teats, and the mother can nourish 2 children, one inside the pouch and the other on the exterior, milk of 2 different compositions. Kudla has guessed about the availability of Kartanya. His erect penis attests to that. This organ is located, like all macropods, underneath his testicles. Because of her indifference, Kartanya doesn't precipitate the action. Instead, she keeps her guard, but she knows that from now on, Kudla will stay close to her, and that it will be necessary to accept his presence. For the saltwater crocodiles, this season is the most beautiful since the water level, now more shallow, allows for fruitful hunting. Some angelfish and a barramundi skim over the bottom. The barramundi will stimulate the appetite of the crocodile, who selects him as his favorite. The barramundi is an estuary fish that belongs to the same family as the perch. In very old specimens, their size can reach close to 6 feet. The barramundi offers the crocodile a flesh rich in proteins, and his size justifies the energy invested in the chase. In the northern waters, the two make a pair of legendary adversaries. At their birth, baby crocodiles have everything to distrust about barramundis, who swallow them without difficulty. Later, the surviving reptiles will avenge their peers. The barramundi trusts the inert stump that rests at the bottom of the water. He is perhaps wrong. It's the crocodile's turn to eat now, but before they do, they must first settle some old scores. These rituals of intimidation are necessary because they prevent cannibalism from placing the group in danger. The barramundis are still not at the size where it becomes difficult to hunt them. The largest among them are the females. In effect, at the age of 6 years, all male barramundis change their sex. When he hunts, the apparent adaptation of the crocodile seems miraculous. The slits in the ears, the eyes, and the nostrils are automatically sealed up through muscular valves, and all are situated just below the line of flotation. When the feast is abundant and when his stomach is full, the crocodile can stock extra food in an enlarged esophagus. Cheeks, therefore, appear on each side of his neck. "1,500 miles from where the crocodiles have eaten, the sea beats against the cut-out shores of Kangaroo Island. Forsaken, Yam no longer serves a purpose for Kudla. He keeps his distance, and the squeals of his sister Kartanya barely arouse his interest. Kartanya fusses over her son Pogo under the eyes of Kudla, who no longer leaves. Nevertheless, something has changed. Kudla doesn't need to follow the mother and the child to be close to them. He accompanies them at their liking. Kartanya and Pogo touch and sniff each other with their noses. With kangaroos, this is a sign of tenderness or welcome. Then Pogo starts to play with his mother and spontaneously adopts the gestures of a Thai boxer, in which one hits with their hands as much as with their feet. Kudla suddenly puts himself between Kartanya and Pogo, as if to show the female that he can be the protector in case of necessity. Bored at having to serve for this demonstration, Pogo has only one idea in his head: go back to his mother. On his way, Pogo collides with Kudla. For without Kartanya, it's Kudla that will be his companion for games. Pogo finally returns to his mother. Kudla has won his bet, appearing in the eyes of Cartania like the father she would desire for her future baby. In the rustling trees where the red flying foxes hang like ripe fruit, the season of birth has already started. A baby hangs inert, hitched to the wings of its mother. One might think it's a stillbirth, but it's only overcome by its entrance into the world, by this light so strong, this noise so intense. Another baby huddles itself up against its mother, who covers it in her wings. As often happens with the red flying foxes, this one has given birth to twins. Now she has to clean up the baby from the placenta and all that is left of the umbilical cord. But proceeding with this operation from 60 feet high is more difficult than for mammals, who do this close to the ground. The first baby does not seem to be bothered, neither by his brother's acrobatics, nor by the gesticulations of his mother, who is scratching herself. The red flying fox struggles to cut the cord that will permit her to free the covering membrane. She perseveres and roughly handles the newborn. It finds itself in a perilous position and holds on with the tips of its claws. Under these circumstances, it can fall to the base of the tree, where some Varanus will make it a small meal. The bat will take several hours to accomplish her business. Then she will refold her wings over her children, who will soon learn the ways of the mammal. They will hold themselves against her body for the duration of the first month. On another tree in the middle of the continent, a crimson chat contemplates the savanna. It hasn't rained for some months, and large gold or scarlet sheets spread between the most resistant bushes. Before the night comes, the orange chat and the citrine wagtail swoop down on the insects that they will slaughter. They now fight over them with the white wagtail, as well as with the masked wood swallow. It's the time of the birds, the hour of beaks and wings that activate themselves in order to flush out the least gnat. For Kintala, who is soon rejoined by his sister Waka, the frenzy of the birds is a new reason to be amazed at the world. Waka discovers the excitement and surprises of this game consisting of chasing birds. Waka gets carried away with her pleasure, but the instinct of hunting is also a work in progress. That which she tracks down today in a game, she will kill tomorrow through necessity. Tired, weary of rushing behind the birds without ever getting to fly behind them, Waka takes refuge in the shade of a bush. The masked wood swallow will stay alone on its branch, barely understanding what tornado has dispersed the conference of birds. Only Mount Artula, which looks on all that lives, could understand that a creature of the desert may have wanted to walk on the heavens of the last continent, just for the time of the dream.